Look at this man, Thomas Alva Edison, a name now carved into history, a symbol of genius, the man who brought light to the world, but before the fame, before the fortune, before the light, there was only darkness, and a boy everyone thought would never amount to anything. This is not the story of the genius everyone knows. This is the story of the boy nobody believed in. This is part 1, The Boy in the Dark. Our story begins in 1847, in the small town of Milan, Ohio. Thomas Edison was the youngest of 7 children, and from the very beginning, he was different. While other children were playing, Thomas was obsessively curious. He would ask why about everything. Why does the wind blow? How does a bird fly? Why is the sky blue? His questions were endless. So endless, in fact, that his school teacher grew frustrated. He told Thomas's mother that his brain was addled, confused, that he was too stupid to learn. Can you imagine being told you're broken before you even had a chance? His pride wounded, his spirit angry, his mother, Nancy, did something that would change everything. She took him out of school. After just 3 months of formal education, she decided she would teach him herself. This was the first turn, the first spark. In the warmth of his mother's belief, a fire was lit. She gave him a book, School of Natural Philosophy, and it opened up a new world. He didn't just read it, he devoured it. He began to do every single experiment inside. This was his real classroom, the basement of his house. But life wasn't done testing him. A severe bout of scarlet fever left him with a profound hearing impairment. He was going deaf. For most, this would be a prison sentence, a life of isolation. But Edison, he saw it differently. He later said his deafness helped him. It cut out the noise of the world. It allowed him to fall deeply, completely, into the silent world of his own thoughts, his laboratory of the mind. By the age of 12, he was working, selling newspapers and candy on a train. But this boy wasn't just a salesman. He set up a small chemistry lab in the baggage car. Can you picture it? A rolling, rickety laboratory with a 12-year-old boy conducting experiments between stops. One day, a chemical fire started. He and his lab were thrown off the train. Another failure, another humiliation, but he didn't stop. He took a job as a telegraph operator. And here, in the click-clack of the Morse code, he found his rhythm. His mind, which struggled with the slow pace of school, was perfectly suited for the rapid electric language of the telegraph. It was here he began his true apprenticeship with electricity. He traveled from city to city, a lonely, partially deaf young man with chemicals staining his pockets and a head full of ideas everyone called impossible. He was 22 years old. He had no diploma, no money, no connections. He arrived in Boston with nothing but the clothes on his back and a dream that burned brighter than any of his failed experiments. He was ready to become an inventor. But his first major invention was a spectacular failure. He created an electric vote recorder for politicians, a machine that would make voting fast and accurate. He thought it was brilliant. But the politicians hated it. They wanted the slow process. It gave them time to make deals. The machine was rejected. His dream shattered on the floor of a government building. He was broke. He was a failure. Again. He lay on the floor of his workshop, staring at the ceiling. The darkness was closing in. This was the moment, the breaking point, the moment where most people give up. But as he lay there in the silence of his own failure, a new thought began to form. A lesson learned in the hardest way possible. He whispered a promise to himself, a promise that would become his creed. Never waste time inventing things people do not want to buy. He got up. He brushed the dust off his clothes. He sold what he had, and with his last few dollars, he bought a one-way ticket to New York City. A new city. A new beginning. He stepped onto the docks with 25 cents in his pocket. He had nothing, but he had a new, ruthless focus. He was no longer just a dreamer. He was a fighter. And in the frantic, beating heart of New York, his fight was just about to begin. New York City, 1869. A city of noise, of greed, of towering dreams and brutal failures. And into this concrete jungle walked Thomas Edison, with nothing but 25 cents and a burning lesson learned from defeat. He was alone. He was hungry. He slept in the basement of a company that made gold price indicators, a machine that ticked out the value of gold to brokers on Wall Street. For Edison, this was a chance. He studied the machine. He learned its secrets. Its rhythm became the soundtrack to his survival. And then, the moment of destiny arrived. One day, the entire system froze. The central transmitter seized up. Every trading floor in New York fell into a panic. Money was being lost by the second. The engineers were helpless, but in the chaos, one man remained calm. Thomas Edison. He had been watching. He had been learning. He knew exactly what was wrong. He stepped forward. He found the broken contact, a small spring that had fallen into the machinery. With steady hands, he fixed it in minutes. The system whirred back to life. The panic subsided. The manager of the company, stunned, looked at this ragged young man who had just saved his business. He offered him a job on the spot. This was not just a job. This was his doorway. With his first real income, Edison did the unthinkable. He didn't save it. He bet it all on himself. He opened his own invention factory in Newark, New Jersey. This wasn't just a workshop, it was a new idea. A place where invention happened not by chance, but on an industrial scale. He worked with a fury that became legend. He and his men became known as the Insomnia Squad, working for days on end, sleeping on tables, fueled by ambition and cheap cigars. He began to invent, not for the glory, but for the market. He improved the telegraph, creating a printer that could record stock prices. It was a sensation. He called it the Universal Stock Ticker, and he sold it. The Western Union Company paid him an unbelievable sum, $40,000. That's over $800,000 today. From 25 cents to a fortune. The boy who was called Addled was now a rich man. But this wasn't the dream. Money was just a tool to build something greater. He moved to a larger complex in Menlo Park, New Jersey, a place the world would soon call the Invention Factory. Here, he promised, he would deliver a minor invention every 10 days and a big thing every 6 months or so. It was an arrogant promise. The world laughed, but Edison was about to make them stop laughing. He set his sights on the greatest problem of the age, defeating the night. Gaslight was dim, dangerous, and dirty. The world needed a new light, an electric light. But for decades, the greatest minds had failed. The light bulbs they created would glow for a few minutes, then burn out into darkness. It was seen as impossible. Edison looked at the problem and said simply, "I will make electricity so cheap that only the rich will burn candles." The hunt began, the greatest scientific race of the century. He tested every material imaginable for a filament, platinum, cobalt, even threads from his friend's beard. Thousands of experiments, thousands of failures. The public and the press began to mock him. Another of Edison's follies, they said. But in the relentless glow of his Menlo Park laboratory, surrounded by his team, he saw not failure, but progress. "I have not failed," he would say. "I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." And then, on October 21st, 1879, after a full 48 hours of work without sleep, it happened. He took a simple, carbonized piece of cotton thread. He placed it inside a glass bulb. He sealed it. He pumped out the air. He connected the wires. He flipped the switch. It glowed. It didn't flicker and die. It didn't burn out. It glowed steadily for 1 hour, then 2, then 13, and then 45 continuous hours. They had done it. They had captured lightning in a glass bottle. The news spread across the world. The man who started with nothing had given humanity a new sun. He had banished the darkness, not just in our streets, but in our very souls. He proved that with enough will, enough resilience, the human spirit could shine brighter than any failure that tried to extinguish it. This was the American dream made real, not by a genius born in a castle, but by a fighter who rose from the ashes of his own failures. A boy who was told he was nothing, but who chose to become a light for the world. Thanks for watching.